are you spending to grow or are you spending to save, right? So there is, and it continues to be amplified, there is an inappropriate place where you are too focused on how cheap can we get the click, how cheap can we get it, how cheap can we get it, where eventually you're going to cheap yourself right out of the game, because underinvestment is a massively dangerous strategy when you're spending anyways. Hey everybody, welcome to the Marketing Blender Show. Today I have the fabulous Ramsey Sanchez back with us, and we are going to talk about a hot topic. Are Google ads still worth it? Are they actually getting more expensive? And what are we going to do about all of this? So Ramsey, we have been talking about doing this episode for couple months now because this has been such a hot topic, but we took the time to really go through the data, and so I'm super excited. So let's start at the top. Are Google ads still worth it?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, so if I'm a Google ads person, yeah, there might be some bias.
Which you are.
Yeah. If I am a Google ads person, and there might be some bias to, yes, you should be running Google ads, but I'm not going to recommend something I don't see working all the time. And I see it working all the time, usually for clients. And so it just, we're mindful with budgets and we're mindful with the targeting, and we want to make sure it's set up properly. When all of those things are done right, Google ads are well worth it for sure.
I agree. And I have so much to say about this, but we want to give you context on this. So we're going to keep going. Okay, are they getting more expensive? Now, for context for you guys, I mean, we have roughly 50 clients. Not all of them are on Google ads, but a whole bunch of them are. So spanning all B2B, different industries from professional services, manufacturing, industrial, tech. So pretty wide range, but are they getting more expensive?
So yes, I mean, the short answer, yes, it's getting more expensive. And I mean, some of those who are out there that have been in the Google ads game since the beginning, since I follow those guys and agencies, and they even said, yeah, I mean, Google ads at one point was less than $1 and everything was cheap, and then 5 years down the road it got more expensive, and then another 5 years, every time Google has some kind of major update, things tend to get more expensive around keywords, and you're bidding on terms with other competitors, and that's when things really start to drive up costs. So yes, it's getting more expensive. Can you dial the costs down for each keyword, cost per click? You can, but there's only a certain point that you can do that, because if you're trying to compete with other competitors who are willing to spend as much as you tell Google to spend on, they're most likely going to show their ads more often,
and they're going to win. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I really want to dive into that, but real quick, is it getting more expensive for all industries in your experience, like what you've seen, or only specific ones?
The specific keywords that are, or industries that are the most expensive have been around technology, SaaS companies, anything around custom software development. All of those keywords are very, very competitive.
And traditionally, they've always been competitive, high cost per click.
Yes, yeah, it's almost always been that way, and there are strategies you can, place a Google ad in with manual bidding and maximum clicks and all these other strategies that we've tried, and we can keep costs down. But I always find that the traffic doesn't always seem to convert as well as other strategies that I like to use, like maximize conversions. When the forecast tells us that the cost per click is high, most likely it's going to be high, and there's not a whole lot you can do to drive it down. Unless
you're just basically eroding your own effectiveness. So he's so right on this, is that there is a paradigm in which perspective, which rose-colored glasses are you looking through? Are you looking at maximizing visibility, click-through, leads, and quality leads? So overarching, are you spending to grow? Or are you spending to save, right? So there is, and it continues to be amplified, there is an inappropriate place where you are too focused on how cheap can we get the click, how cheap can we get it, how cheap can we get it, where eventually you're going to cheap yourself right out of the game, because underinvestment is a massively dangerous strategy when you're spending anyways. So I really want you guys thinking about overarching quality and lead. The further we go into this new, well, it's not new anymore, decades old digital world, but now it's just getting even more accelerated. The further we go, this is just standard operating practice. And especially in the B2B environment, really only in the last couple of years, we've had a number of clients where just in the last 5 years, this is the first time they've ever done Google ads. And guess what? They're not alone. More and more people continue to go, wow, we're behind the 8 ball. Wow, we should have jumped in. Wow, I wish we would have done this 10 years ago. Of course, ads are getting more expensive. And then to Ramsey's point, anytime there's a major update where there's more attention and more urgency to be like, wow, we can't miss out, they're going to bump the price up. So, however, there are a few industries, I think, and please feel free to disagree with me, but I think we've seen a few that are taking a little bit less of a hit. Some of our more niche keywords, like highly specialized focused, but again, it goes back to they seem to not be being as impacted negatively. Like we're not seeing quite the spike, but again, less competition, less influx. And so I think we're seeing the niche folks, but they're also dominating in SEO, right? So they're not so heavily reliant on paid ads. Any other ones where you're like, yeah, I really haven't seen a dramatic change, even though there is an uptick across the board?
Yeah, that's a great question. If there's any that you can remember, but like the ones that I think about almost constantly is there's a couple of manufacturing clients that we have that manufacturing different parts across the U.S. and can even deliver parts overseas. Typically, those CPCs have been super low just throughout the whole year. It's sort of a niche product, the products that they manufacture, and so there has been a whole lot of issue around that, other than when something like a catalyst event, like a news article comes out or things are on tariffs or costs going up. Sometimes the CPCs will see go up with that, but then usually it sort of corrects itself and then comes back down. But usually, since we've been working with that client for over a year now, those CPCs have always been generally around the $2 to $3 range. And it's one of those really great set of keywords that we say we're going to continue to invest in these terms because they work for you. And at some point, we're going to find the ceiling for this, and we're going to keep pouring more money into it because it produces results. That's just one example. There's another one where we audited this company recently in their Google Ads account, and they offer car parts. Like they sell car parts online, and that I thought that was super interesting because most of the time, if you need extra car parts, you go to AutoZone or it's some brand name out there that, or you go to what they call, I guess, pick and pulls. You can go find parts and then do it yourself. Well, this company sort of helps in that area, and I thought it was interesting when I looked at the forecast and trend of their keywords for the last 2 years, and there had not been a whole lot of ebb and flow. It was just constant all year, and I thought to myself, well, it's an industry where there's always issues around cars. Like people are always going to have car problems, no matter what's going on in the seasonality, news or Christmas or anything like that. There's always a need for those parts, and so the CPCs around that were decent, and they weren't ever really losing volume. And typically that's when you see costs go high for keywords. It's during seasonal times, there's less search volume around those terms. And Google's finding it really hard to scrape and find search users for those terms. And that's why they've sort of switched to this contextual based keyword formatting, where someone's looking for something like around the meaning of the keyword that you're trying to bid on. It's not very often that someone's looking for your exact keyword. And so again, there's a lot of strategy that goes behind this and testing different keyword groups, but it's trying its best to help those who are paying for the ad network and getting the ads in front of the right person.
Exactly.
And for us to kind of keep costs down and make sure we're on trend and we're bidding on the right keywords, we go in and remove all the fluff, remove the negative keywords, and just always monitoring it.
Yeah, and I love what you're saying about strategy. So there's a couple different things going into this. So Ramsey's really talking about understanding the humans behind these clicks. You guys, digital ads are not this random, automated robot universe. I mean, there are literal humans speaking to AI or typing it into Google and seeking answers, right? And so we've always, from a digital standpoint and return on investment, talked about intent, but now AI is simply speeding up and kind of amplifying the organization segmentation behind intent. And so, for instance, a couple different things. So often people have a tendency, I think, to look at the platform or the digital manager and solely focus on, is Google doing this? Is my manager good? That type of thing. But you're exactly right. Like car parts. Okay, during the pandemic, all of a sudden there was this crazy issue in all the supply chain, and wow, we couldn't get cars, and so people were fixing their cars, right? And so we saw a spike, but that was not about the digital manager. That was simply the environment and the humans being like, wow, I need to fix my car. I've got to do something about this, and we see that so frequently. I mean, like, you even mentioned tariffs in the manufacturing space. Yes, there are real things off screen happening in the world that then impact the clicks. And so when he talks about strategy, it really is thinking what's happening in that human's environment, what's happening in the broader world that might be addressing or causing or changing the click patterns. And so you've got to remember, you're always looking at humans, which is also why we're always thinking return on investment and growth and serving those humans, not just lowering the click. It's a really big difference there. Okay, so what are some other trends that you're seeing in Google in general, or things that you feel people need to get better at, or that you're really focusing on in order to drive return on investment here?
Yeah, you brought up several good points, and try to explain that when we set up the Google Ads account around keywords, and I mentioned something around there are different bidding factors that we can choose from: maximize clicks, manual, maximize conversions. Those are part of the machine learning that Google uses to help identify, hey, this person clicked in this location, this geolocation, and it was around this time, it was this state, it was it was male, female, it was a lot of different factors that were going into that click. And then they also converted from that, right? So it might have been a phone call, it might have been a form fill. So which keyword was it that brought them there? Which keyword was it that ended up being the conversion, right? So there's so many different things in Google Ads that we have to really just keep tabs on.
Yeah.
And we can talk about the trends, and we can somewhat not manipulate, but we can definitely make sure that we're focusing on the right parts of Google Ads that are going to drive the most conversions. So a lot of times we work with companies that service nationally, and I always like to ask them, what parts of the U.S. actually work, or like, do you see the most business come from?
Yeah.
Right. Is it Texas? It's probably Texas, right? It's a big population, but where else? And we can list off some of the states that say, well, these states actually don't really have that much volume as in this area. And so there's one or two ways we can look at that. We can focus in that area to show more awareness, or we can focus in states that actually have produced a lot
higher
of business.
volume.
Yeah, higher volume, more business for you. And oftentimes that's something simple like that has helped on the Google Ads site. Now, other aspects of Google Ads that are more innovative, I would say, is the PMax side.
Yeah.
The Performance Max.
Yeah.
Was not a believer of Performance Max. I think most Google Ads people weren't believers of PMax when it first launched, because they wouldn't allow you to see where exactly the ads were showing, because PMax used the whole ecosystem in Google Ads, right? YouTube, display, Gmail, search. And
so it felt like less control.
Right. Yeah. It was less control, and it was no insight on what was going on and what was doing well. Now they're starting to allow you to look at that. Eventually, hopefully, I don't know if this is going to be the case, but we can start optimizing for those specific targeting placements.
Yep.
And there are ways of doing that now, like, you use less video or use less images and use more text, and you can kind of persuade your PMax to start showing in those areas more. And we have found that those have been producing quite a bit of results and at a cheaper CPC. Because again, if someone's searching for those keywords that you told it that we would like to search for, it's going to try to open up the floodgates, as I call it, and open up to other people who are searching for those type of terms and kind of are similar to your audience because you're giving it your GA4 data as well. And that area has been really interesting for me. And we've been implementing PMAX more and more on clients, and it's been doing well. Now, the other thing is that I like about Google Ads is that it has many like great integrations. Like everyone wants to integrate with Google Ads. And one interesting thing that I've been trying with some clients here is that Google Ads can streamline straight over to Bing. And Bing has been one of those search networks that have been growing and growing. And we have clients that say, hey, have you considered Bing, or have you talked about Bing? And again, another platform that I was not completely convinced of 5 years ago, but because of the whole AI, it was one of the earlier adopters of AI,
Yep.
and more people were using it. And then there's a lot of Surface Microsoft tablet users out there who use Bing. Google allows you to actually streamline your ads over there, almost sync everything. And so everything you do in Google, you can do in Bing. And if you want to talk about cheaper CPCs, Bing is sort of what Google Ads was years ago. It's a little more costly now because more people are getting on there,
Yeah.
but it's still cheap. But here's the thing, Bing does have still lower search volume compared to Google Ads, right?
Yeah.
Google dominates the market in search, but it's still a great area because your search users are most likely there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is still not a set it and forget it strategy. PMAX, not
Right.
any of them. I mean, it requires diligent attention, making sure that strategy is still playing out, making sure that qualified leads are still, and that there's any adjustments that need to be made. It's not just turn it on and run away and hope for the best.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
So a couple different things too. What we had an interesting conversation that came up, and this is starting to get a little bit into SEO, but still primarily on Google Ads as well. Website traffic, by and large, is down across the board. Correct?
I would say yes. I mean, I think marketing, right? And
Yeah.
we're talking about marketing right now. We have seen that search has been influenced a little bit more by it, by AI. I think, like you were saying, since the pandemic, during that time, there was a huge influx of people on the internet. So there was more users, using search engines at that time for whatever events they were talking about. But yeah, I would say as things start to progress more into back in the office, more other businesses that are opening up and things like that, I would say, yeah, I think the volume has kind of come down for some industries.
Well, and one other thing. So now we have no-click search options, right? So going back to intent, if somebody's got research intent, it is very possible versus buying intent. It is very possible that they are simply looking at the AI populated results, even if there's links attached to them, and they're like, yep, I got what I needed, peace out, right? And so even if it was your blog, even if it was sometimes your ad, especially if it's middle of the funnel, they don't necessarily have to click. But you guys, this is not necessarily bad. Well, you've got to think about Google Ads are typically meant to eventually fill, especially in B2B pipeline, right? So even if it's middle of the funnel, we're nurturing them into qualified leads, or hopefully we have buying intent. And so they are converting into discovery calls and other sales opportunities. So if you've got somebody just in the research phase of their process, well, then it's okay that your website volume is slightly down. Now, it does, back to the overarching marketing ecosystem, remind us you've got to stay visible. Your brand name has got to be out there, and you've got to stay in the game all the way through to make sure that that's true. But we don't want people having knee-jerk reactions like, oh my God, my website traffic is down. Well, yeah, we're in a major inflection point in regards to what AI is doing, both on the ad side as well as the SEO side. And so we are going to see predictable changes in behavior, even if we're not sure what they were going to be. But we've got to be open to believing the data, asking smart questions about what are the humans thinking and why are they now changing. Now, one other thing I want to bring up that I think people are going to be surprised about is what percentage is actually AI search versus still Google search or still Bing. And I saw a percentage the other day where they literally were like, maximum, it's still only 5 to 7% of all searches. And you have people going, oh my gosh, I only use AI. I only use my GPT. Well, you're alone. And we've got a long, long tail before AI and AI, search, AI as a search engine are the only platforms. Like, we are nowhere close, people. So do not cut your nose off to spite your face when you're thinking about what are my lead sources. Yeah.
You said a lot of great stuff there about the search. And now I kind of understand, with the question of, I think website traffic is coming down overall. I look at different sets of keywords all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, all the different industries that from pawn services to manufacturing to, the car parts, medical. And it's really interesting because I like to look at the all-time data, which really only goes back to about 2022 for Google. And I can probably go further, but it's usually always going up.
Yeah.
Like this, ever since, like you said, the pandemic, search volume for most keyword groups have gone up, but website traffic doesn't get influenced as much across the board from all of our clients. And we look at their traffic usually year over year in audits. They usually stay the same, or they dip down. And to your point, that could be because the search user is more in mode where they're researching, or they're using AI, or again, we know that no-click Google searches have gone up like crazy. I think the last number was 40%, and now it's up to about 60% of no-click.
Wow.
And that's amazing. I mean, it's amazing to think about. What does that mean? Is someone more savvy? They know exactly what they're searching for, and they're getting the answers right there. And those are the conversations we have with clients. Some of the clients say, I just go into Google and I search for something and I got the answer right there without even having to click on anything. Yep. You got AI overview, you got postings, even some links will have answers in their meta description. You have Google business profiles, you've got all kinds of stuff that's in front of you. Now, the other interesting fact or interesting thought process is that if someone does click, if they got all the answers they like, but then they end up clicking, then that user is more valuable.
Yeah.
Because even though they get all the information, they're more valuable because they're clicking and they're on your profile or on your website. So you got to think about that. And, then that's when your website becomes important. But going back to what you're saying, okay, well, if they're still in that research mode, you definitely want to be in front of them as much as possible, right? Multi-touch. So if there's search ads at the top, you got your Google business profile, you got your display, you got YouTube. And that's why I think PMAX is so important now, especially with less people coming to your website. They're on other sites still. They're still doing something on the internet.
Yes.
And if you get in front of them because they had searched for this keyword at some point, and you're getting in front of them because Google knows that they searched for that, it's a really great tactic. When you think about it, it's super important to have those tools and leverage them if you want to win in this space. I mean, those who are doing it are quietly winning. So
100%. And, it makes me remember the podcast that we did not too long ago about lead sources, right? Yep. So we want to be careful to over-exaggerate a single lead source. What we want for you when we're thinking about a growth strategy and how do you consistently and predictably build an amazing pipeline that drives revenue is we want multiple lead sources, right? So you're going to have referrals, you're going to have any off screens from speaking to trade shows, you're going to have your digital strategies, maybe your SEO, you're going to have direct traffic, and there is no scenario where every single lead has the same cost per lead, right? Google is going to cost very different than referrals. Why? Because referrals were quote unquote free. No, they weren't. Right? You had to work really hard to get those, but on a spreadsheet, they look very different. That doesn't mean we throw out Google ads and all those leads that we could get with these strangers just because referrals are higher return on ad spend, which was 0, right? So we want to think ecosystem. And, something that you're talking about, kind of the complexities in this is that we know that anytime we add pay-per-click in regards to paid social to this, or if we amplify with SEO and we start to really think about the correlations between our different lead sources, all ships lift with the rising tide. And we've seen this personally, we've seen this for so many of our clients where their systems have matured, is that direct traffic dramatically goes up when we have multiple lead sources going on. And so we're thinking overall cost per lead, like holistically, if you add all of your business development costs, including sales salaries, what's your cost per lead and what's your cost per client acquisition cost, right? And so always thinking ecosystem. And that's what I think really about these no-click and the changes in behavior is there's always been complexities in digital marketing. There's always been complexities in lead generation. But now I think it's accelerating and amplifying and maybe even giving us a little bit more clarity around how interconnected all of these are. It's just large language models and AI are now pulling that context from social, from YouTube, from SEO, and really pushing that buyer's journey all together. And so while it looks different from a data perspective, I think we're seeing the same buyer journey we always have. It's just now that we are getting even more complexity in regards to how the tools are engaging with the buyers. I don't know.
I mean, I think you're right. One of the first things that I learned was buyer journey. The first company that I worked with talked about the buyer's journey. They started to try to create the buyer's journey, and it looked like this. It was like this pathway. And so the buyer's on this pathway to the end, and there was all these different points on the side of the pathway of, okay, you need to do a workshop here, you need to do an engagement here, you need to follow up here. And, and then for them, they also need to take these different programs.
Yeah.
And then at the very end, it says sustainment. Like, okay, now once they're at the end, we don't just forget about them. Like, we need to do something with them. And so there's, like you said, more mature companies who are often there at the end with their buyer's journey. And then it's like, what else could we be doing to sustain them and put them to another buyer's journey? And a lot of what we do is we really do map out that buyer's journey. And you're always going to use some sort of form of paid or direct or indirect to get in front of your client or your ideal customer. So I think that's super important, and I always really enjoy that part of where is somebody in the buyer's journey. And when we work with e-commerce brands, I think about how someone told me to buy custom floor mats for our vehicle. He said it would change your life, and I'm like, okay, which brand should I buy? And he said, do this, use this brand. They're $300 custom floor mats. I don't want to pay $300 custom floor mats, but I am now in the buyer journey where it's like, okay, now I know that I want custom floor mats because they are cool. I see the benefit of that when something spills on it, it's not getting on your carpet. I've got 2 little ones, so it's going to be a huge benefit factor, but I don't want to pay $300. So now I'm in a journey where I'm going and search in Google and find different custom floor mat companies and price match and see which ones are, it may be that their branding or messaging is we're in Texas. It might be something that convinces me that says, okay, well, this is a company, even though they're not, it saves me a few more dollars and they're in Texas, I'm going to use this company most likely. It just might be, again, it just kind of comes back to the human aspect of it.
What you're saying about that, the buyer's journey is that you're right. Like, as humans, we all go through this type of thing and we are predisposed to have certain buying habits, and then we bring them to work as well. So that's probably one of my final tips about what to do about Google Ads getting more expensive is we're seeing across the board with us, with the strategic planning for our clients, middle of the funnel has to get stronger and stronger and stronger. Like nurturing those leads, we cannot skip and just focus only on top level, fast buying intent lead gen and then closing the deal. Like we've got to really, really start strengthening that middle of the funnel. And I think we are going to continue to see middle of the funnel despite no click traffic. I do think we're going to continue to see that become a very big deal, in 2026 and beyond, maybe even more than we have recently. Agree? Disagree?
Yes, and I completely agree. I think we've had some really good conversations around middle of the funnel type approaches for strategy, especially with paid ads, because a lot of times when we run a paid ad, we're trying to go straight for bottom of the funnel,
Yes.
search intent, keywords, someone's ready to buy.
Yep.
And typically that's when it's the most expensive.
Yeah,
right?
and it's only about 3% of the market that's actually looking for your solution. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and that's a great point, because I think with Google Ads, the average conversion, right? If you're talking about someone who's converting to a form or a demo or a phone call, I mean, you're talking about 3 to 4%. I think it's higher, maybe 4 to 5, maybe pushing 6, depending on the industry.
Yeah.
But it's really hard to get past that point. There are certain clients that have achieved a 7 to 10% conversion, even higher at times, and that's really great. We can get to that point, but again, when we get into the conversation of cost per lead, the CPCs, and then there are other competitors out there, like we have to become really strict with, okay, beyond this ad, there's not much more we can try to do to move the needle. I mean, some weeks we might be able to achieve a better CPC or a better cost per conversion, but we need to try something else that is not always bottom of the funnel and it's going up to the middle of the funnel.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's becoming way more apparent that when we get the keywords to a point where they're so congruent with the searches that are coming through.
Yeah.
Like there's one client I'm thinking about, it's a SaaS company, and everything around that keyword, all the searches that are coming through are really aligned, and they're getting to the page, they're seeing it.
Yeah.
Because they get in the Google Ads and they're looking and they're saying, yeah, you're like, all the clicks that are coming through, these look great, and the terms that are coming through that you showed us, this makes sense. What is it that they're doing that is not converting to a demo? And it's, again, we get back into purchasing decision, and they're just not ready at that point. Maybe it's a quarterly thing. It's something around the year. Who knows? They're not in charge of the budget. I don't know. But we know that if we can at least capture their information, we go up to the middle of the funnel, we can offer them something around that keyword, right? And Google likes that too, right?
Yeah.
You're bringing authority, you're bringing content, right? You have an ebook. We want to not use the word ebook in your ebook, but like we want to use something like guide or roadmap,
but still, high value download.
High value download.
Yeah,
there we go.
Exactly.
And that's really important, because now your dollars are being spent a little more effectively, in a sense where you can still do bottom of the funnel, but you can go up and offer that high value download or content and try to capture their click. And I think that's becoming way more apparent. And you can utilize that way beyond just search.
Yeah.
You can use it in social, as you were talking, even Performance Max. You display those different items out there, and you are now becoming more of an authority. And I think that's a big buzzword right now, is authority. That you actually have content around your service, rather than just trying to ask for the service right.
Yeah,
right
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and the great thing about authority, AI cannot do mastery. AI cannot do mastery. What it is doing is it is aggregating everything that's already out there. So if you actually have a point of view that is beneficial to your market and your audience, and it is different than what everybody else is saying, AI is not going to come up with that for you. And so you've got to start with your own point of view. And man, it can be really marvelous, because AI eventually will deteriorate everything down to mediocrity, because it cannot do human creativity, human mastery, and human innovation. Only you can, right? It only makes us more efficient right now. Quick recap. Yes, Google Ads are still worth it. And yes, they are getting more expensive, but here's the takeaways you need to be thinking about. So first things first, don't just turn off your Google Ads or any of your paid marketing. No knee-jerk reactions. Focus on an overall system of growth.
Secondly, do not just focus on the cost per click. We know that prices are going to go up and down for keyword bidding. You need to be focusing on optimizing for lead and lead quality. That is the most important part of Google Ads right now.
I love it. And on that note, you need a good digital marketing manager. You need somebody that really understands the trends, can think globally, can really guide conversations around cost per click, cost per lead, conversion strategy, and what are the humans doing and how will it affect your revenue.
Yeah, and a great follow-up on that one is the next point. Don't trust ChatGPT to help build out your PMAX campaign. And then when you do create a PMAX campaign, just don't let it run on its own. There are still a lot of maintenance things that you have to do with PMAX. Even just looking at it weekly and doing some adjustments will make it go a long way.
Absolutely. And while we did say don't quit your Google ads, also don't exaggerate them as a part of your overall lead system. We want you to have multiple lead systems, multiple lead sources on screen and off screen. So make sure that you are thinking about a balanced ecosystem that really builds resilience into your marketing.
Yeah, and as marketers, we love Google Ads, and we love all aspects of marketing, all the different lead funnel options. So Google Ads isn't going to the end all be all. It's going to be a really great tool asset for your lead funnel system. But remember to go up into the middle of funnel as well. Create content, create downloadable content for your clients, for your future users.
Exactly. And all of this boils down to don't abandon strategy. Know your buyer persona or your ICP. Focus on your messaging. Is it converting interest into inquiry? And make sure that you are pre-deciding how are you going to hit your goal, so then you are clear what role Google Ads needs to play in your overarching growth system and your overarching budget. All right, you guys, thank you so much. If you have learned any additional tips or have seen any other trends, please post them in the comments. Hit us up. We love to be argued with. Iron sharpens iron, right? And we are constantly in the weeds trying to figure out what's happening, what are the changes that you need to be successful, because we believe in meaning, connection, and prosperity for all. And so that's why we're here. So go out there, grow. Don't freak out about all of the digital changes that are happening, because you've still got something so important to offer the world, and they're searching for you even online. So just go there and serve them. We'll see you next week. Onward and upward.
I feel like I was intensely looking at the lens when I was like,
it is a funny setup where it's like, wow, I see you. Yeah, totally.